Well, good morning and welcome to Tuesdays with the Pilgrim as we continue reading Howard Bell Wright's story, The Shepherd of the Hills, with Chapter 14. Now Mr. Howitt stood quietly by the corral gate when the horseman rode up. It was Wash Gibbs on his way home from an all-day visit with friends on the river. When the big mountaineer took the shortcut through Mutton Hollow, he thought to get well past the ranch before light failed. No matter how well fortified with the courage distilled by his friend Jennings, the big man would never have taken the trail by the old ruined cabin alone after dark. He had evidently been riding at a good pace, for his mule's neck and flanks were wet with sweat. Gibbs himself seemed greatly excited, and one hand rested on the pistol at his hip as he pulled up in front of the shepherd. Without returning Mr. Howitt's greeting, he pointed toward the two empty chairs in front of the house, demanding roughly, "Who was that with you before you heard me a-comin'?" "Sammy Lane was here a few minutes ago," replied the shepherd. Gibbs uttered an oath. "She was she? Well, who was the man?" "There was no man," returned the other. "Young Matt and Pete were here for supper, but they went as soon as the meal was finished, before Sammy came." "Don't you lie to me!" exclaimed the big man with another burst of language, and a threatening movement with his hand that rested on the pistol. Mr. Howitt was startled. Never in his life before had such words been addressed at him. He managed to reply with quiet dignity, "I have no reason for deceiving you, Mr. Gibbs. There has been no man here but myself since Matt and Pete left after supper." The shepherd's manner carried conviction, and Gibbs hesitated, evidently greatly perplexed. During the pause, Brave growled again and faced towards the cliff below the corral, his hair bristling. "What's the matter with that dog?" asked Gibbs, turning uneasily in his saddle to face in the direction the animal was looking. "What is it, Brave?" said Mr. Howitt. The only answer was an uneasy whine, followed by another growl, all of which said plainly in dog talk, "I don't know what it is, but there is something over there on that cliff that I don't like." "It must be some animal," said the shepherd. "Ain't no animal that makes a dog act like that. Did anybody pass this way while you was a-sitting there just before I come in sight?" "Not a soul," answered the other. "Did you meet someone on the road?" The big man looked at the shepherd hard before he answered in a half-frightened, half-bullying tone, "I seed something in the road yonder, but it disappeared right by the old shack there under the bluffs." He twisted around in his saddle again, facing the cliff with its dense shadows and dim twilight forms, as he muttered, "If I was only right sure Then swinging back, he leaned toward the man on the ground. "Look here, mister. There's them that lows there's things in this here hollow that to be afeard of. And I reckon it's so. There sure been a hell to pay at that there cabin down yonder. I ain't a-sayin' what it was I seed, but if it were anywhere else, I'd a said it was a man. But if it were a man, I don't know why you didn't see him when he come past, or else you're a-lyin'. I just want to tell you, you're right smart of a stranger in these here parts. Even if you had been a-working for old Matt all summer, you're too blame careful about talking about yourself, or tell him where you come from, to suit some folks. Some strangers are all right, but again, some ain't. We don't aim to have nobody in this here neighborhood that jumps into the bush when they see an honest man a-comin'." As he finished speaking, Gibbs straightened himself in the saddle, and before Mr. Howitt could reply, the dun mule, at the touch of a spur, had dashed away up the road in the direction taken by Sammy Lane. It was quite dark in the heavy timber of the hollow by the time Sammy had reached the edge of the open ground on the hillside, but once on the higher level, clear of trees, the strong glow of the western sky still lighted the way. From here it was not far to the girl's home, and as she climbed a spur of Dewey, Sam saw the cabin and heard distinctly the sweet strains of her father's violin. On top of the rise, the young woman paused a moment to enjoy the beauties of the evening, which seemed to come to her with a new meaning that night. As she stood there, her strong young figure was clearly outlined against the sky to the man who was riding swiftly along the road over which she had just passed. Sammy turned when she heard the quick beating of the mule's feet. Then, recognizing the huge form of the horseman as he came out of the woods into the light, she started quickly away towards her home. But the mule and its rider were soon beside her. "Howdy, Sammy." Gibbs leapt from the saddle, and with the bridle rein over his arm, came close to the girl. "Fine evening for a walk."
"Howdy,"
returned the young woman coolly, quickening her pace.
"You needn't be in such a powerful hurry," growled Wash. "If you'd have got time to talk to that old cuss down at the ranch, you sure got time enough to talk to me."
Sammy turned angrily.
"You better get back on your mule and just go about your business, Wash Gibbs. When I want to walk with you, I'll let you know."
"That's all right, honey," exclaimed the other insolently. "I'm going your way just the same, and might as well mosey along together. I was going home, but I got business with your pa now."
"Worst thing for Daddy, too," flashed the girl. "I wish you'd stay away from him."
Wash laughed. "Your daddy couldn't keep house without me, nohow. Who was that fella talking with you and the old man down yonder?"
"There wasn't nobody talking to us," replied Sammy shortly.
"That's what he said, too," growled Gibbs. "But I seed somebody a-sneaking into the bushes when I rode up. I thought when I was down there it might be that old haunt. But I know it was a man now. There's something mighty funny going on around here since that fella come into the neighborhood, and he sure'll find out something in Mutton Holler more alive than old Matt's gal if he ain't a-careful."
The girl caught her breath quickly. She knew the big ruffian's methods, and with good reason feared for her old friend, should he even unconsciously incur the giant's displeasure. As they drew near the house, Wash continued,
"Young Matt, he was there, too. Let me tell you, I ain't forgot about his big show at the mill last spring. He'll have to do a heap of better than he done then when I get around to him."
Sammy laughed scornfully.
"'Pears like you ain't in no big hurry to try it on. I ain't heard tell of young Matt's a-leaving the country yet. You'd better stay away from gin and still, though, when you do try it."
Then, while the man was tying his mule to the fence, she ran into the cabin to greet her father with a hysterical sob that greatly astonished Jim. Before explanations could be made, a step was heard approaching the door, and Sammy had just time to say,
"Wash Gibbs,"
in answer to her father's inquiring look, when the big man entered. Mr. Lane arose to hang his violin on the peg.
"Don't stop for me, Jim," said the newcomer. "Just let her go. Me and Sammy's been a-having a nice little walk, and some right pert music would sound mighty fine."
Gibbs was angered beyond reason at Sammy's last words, or he would have exercised greater care. Sammy's father made no reply until the girl had left the room. But whatever it was that his keen eye read in his daughter's face, it made him turn to his guest with anything but a cordial manner. And there was that in his voice that should have warned the other.
"So you and Sammy went for a walk, did you?" "She was a-comin' home from the shepherd's ranch, and I caught up with her," explained Gibbs. "I knowed as how she needed company, so I come along. I seemed to be about as welcome as usual," he added with an ugly grin.
"Meanin' my girl don't want your company, and told you so," said the other softly. Wash answered with a scowl.
"Sammy's getting too dead burn good for me since Ollie's uncle took him in, and now this here old man from nowhere has come. It's worse than ever. She'll put a rope around our necks the first thing you know."
Jim's right hand slipped quietly into his hickory shirt where the button was missing, and he drawled, "My girl always was too good for some folks, and it's about time you was a-finding it out. She can't help it. She was born that way. She's got mighty good blood in her veins, that girl has, and I don't aim to ever let it be mixed up with some low-down common yeller kind." The deliberate purpose of the speaker was too evident to be mistaken. The other man's hand flew down to his hip almost before Mr. Lane had finished a sentence. But Wash was not quick enough. Like a flash, Jim's hand was withdrawn from inside the hickory shirt, and the giant looked squarely into the muzzle of Jim Lane's ever-ready murderous weapon. In the same even voice, without the slightest allusion to the unfinished movement of the other, Mr. Lane continued, "I done told you before that my girl would pick her own company, and I ain't never feared for a minute that she'd take up with such as you. Ollie Stewart ain't so mighty much of a man, maybe, but he's clean, he is, and the stock's pretty good. But you can just listen to me, or you can mosey out of that door, and the next time we meet we'll settle it for good, without any arrangement." As Sammy's father talked, the big figure of his visitor relaxed, and when Jim had finished his slow speech, Wash was leaning forward with his elbows on his knees, his hands clasped in front. "We ain't got no call to fight now, Jim," he said in a tone of respect. "We got something else to think about, and that's what I come here for tonight. I didn't aim to till I seed what I did at the ranch down yonder. I tell you, it's time we was a-doing something." At this, Mr. Lane's face and manner changed quickly. He put up his weapon, and the two men drew their chairs close together, as though death had not a moment before stretched out his hand for them. For an hour they sat talking in low tones. Sammy in the next room had heard the conversation up to this point, but now only an occasional word reached her ears. Gibbs seemed to be urging some action, and her father was vigorously protesting. "I tell you, Jim, it's the only safe way. You didn't used to be so darn squeamish." Several times the old shepherd was mentioned, and also the stranger Wash had seen that evening. And once the trembling girl heard young Matt's name. At length the guest rose to go, and Mr. Lane walked with him to the gate. Even after the big man was mounted, the conversation still continued, Wash still urging and Jim still protesting. When his visitor had gone, Mr. Lane came slowly back to the house. Extinguishing the light, he seated himself in the open doorway and filled his pipe. Sammy caught the odor of tobacco, and a moment later Jim heard the quick, light step on the floor behind him. Then two arms went around his neck.
"What is it, Daddy? What is it? Why don't you drive that man away?"
"Did you hear us a-talking?" asked the man, an anxious note in his voice.
"I heard you talking to him about pestering me, but after that you didn't talk so loud. What is the matter, Daddy, that he should stay and be so thick with you after the things you said? I was sure he'd make you kill him."
Jim laughed softly. "You're just like your mother, girl, just like her, with that old blood a-backing you up." Then he asked a number of questions about Mr. Howitt and her visit to the ranch that evening. As Sammy told him of her ambitions to fit herself for the place that would be hers when she married, and repeating the things that Mr. Howitt had told her, explained how the shepherd had promised to help, Jim expressed his satisfaction and delight. "I knowed you was a-studying about something, girl," he said, "but I didn't say nothing, 'cause I knowed how you'd tell me when you was ready."
"I didn't want to say nothing till I was sure, you see," replied the daughter. "I aimed to tell you as soon as I got home tonight, but Wash Gibbs didn't give me no chance."
The man held her close. "Dad Howitt sure puts things right, Sammy. It'll be old times come back, when you're a lady down in your own house with all your fine friends around. And you'll do it, girl, you sure will. But don't never be afraid to bank on the old blood. It'll see you through." Then his voice broke. You won't never be learned away from your old daddy, will you, honey? Will you always stand by daddy like you do now? Will you let me and young Matt slip around once in a while just to look at you, all so fine?"
Daddy Jim, if you don't hush, I'll...
She hid her face on his shoulder. There, honey, I was just a-funnin'. You'll always be my Sammy, the only boy I ever had. You just naturally couldn't be nothing else. Long after his daughter had gone to her room and to her bed, the mountaineer sat in the doorway looking into the dark. He heard the short bark of a fox in the bush back of the stable, and the wild cry of a catamount from the cliff further down the mountain, which was answered by another from the timber below the spring. He saw the great hills heaving their dark forms into the sky, and in his soul he felt the spirit of the wilderness and the mystery of the hour. At last you went into the house to close and bar the door. Away down in Mutton Hollow a dog barked, and high up on Old Dewey near Sunny's Lookout, a spot of light showed for a moment, then vanished. And that's the end of chapter 14. We'll continue next week with chapter 15, The Party at Ford's. Until then, take care, stay safe, and God bless.